The center has submitted a detailed affidavit on the Manipur viral video in which two women were stripped, paraded naked, one of them brutally gang raped. I'm Barkha, you're with the Mojo story. In a few moments from now, we'll be talking to Justice Madan Lokur, one of the senior most jurists of the country, who's also, of course, retired from the Supreme Court, for his perspective on what the Supreme Court can and should do. But in the meantime, the trauma of the people of Manipur continues unabated. The Manipur viral video that jolted India has compelled the center to go before the Supreme Court and argue that this particular case should A, now be investigated by the CBI, B, its conclusion must be done in a time-bound manner within 6 months of the submission of the charge sheet by the CBI, and 3, the center has asked the Supreme Court to take a decision to transfer the case outside of Manipur. The center has also assured the Supreme Court that the survivors of the sexual abuse and rape are being provided counseling, rehabilitation measures, security, as well as education and job opportunities. But the question is, this is one case. We ourselves at the Mojo Story have documented not just one, but multiple cases of sexual abuse, sexual violence, as women's bodies become battlefields. We've also reported on the plight of children, 32 babies born in a relief camp. And this one viral video triggered the conscience of the nation, but there is still perhaps thousands and thousands of people who are suffering. What can and should the court do? Let's go across now to Justice Madan Lokur, who joins us to give us his both legal as well as compassionate perspective on what can happen next. Justice Lokur, thank you for your time. As I was saying, the center's affidavit does 2 or 3 things that of course should be welcomed. It argues for the case to be taken outside of Manipur, time-bound resolution, 6 months, and the CBI investigation. But as far as I'm able to understand, it is of course talking about this one case. How do you respond to what the center has submitted in the court? We don't know what the court will do because the Chief Justice who actually asked for this did not hold his court today. His court was on leave. How do you respond to this affidavit?
Well, thank you, Barkha. There are 2 or 3 things that we need to pay attention to. One is that the decision taken by the central government is, I think, too little, too late. The video was surfaced, I think, maybe about 10 days ago. And it is now, after about 7 or 8 days or maybe 9 days, that the central government has said that, okay, we are going to investigate and we're going to ask CBI to investigate and have the trial outside Manipur. Why wasn't it done much earlier? It should have been done on the very first day before the Supreme Court even took notice of it. I mean, this is the duty of the central government and of the state government, that in a situation like this, they should act with alacrity. Now, here they have waited for the Supreme Court to act, and after the Supreme Court acts, then they say, okay, now we're going to take some action. So I think the Supreme Court should ask the central government, what were you doing all this while? And it's not only about the video. These kind of things have been happening for the last almost about 80, 85 days, maybe 3 months. And you have documented several of these instances. So it's not as if, you take up one case and say, all right, we've done something about it. What about the rest of them?
Yeah. Let me share with you a report that we've just done. And that is, in fact, on a second rape and murder, Justice Lokur, and this is, of course, the withheld identity of the 2 women. There were 2 women, 121, 124. This is their FIR. Here's a cruel irony for you to contemplate, Justice Lokur. On the same day that the Manipur viral video sexual assault takes place, which is the 4th of May, elsewhere in the state, these 2 women working as employees at a car wash, main breadwinners for their families, friends, 121 years old, 124 years old, are raped and murdered. Their bodies are still lying, we're at the end of July, in a hospital morgue. Their families are too scared and fearful to be able to even travel to the hospital and claim these bodies. Once again, very much like the first case, the FIR The incident takes place on the same day. The FIR is filed on the 16th of May. No arrests have been made at the end of July. Now, I ask you this because, yes, very good. The Supreme Court, the center, the country is talking about this viral video. What about cases like the one I've just described?
Yes, you see, this is one case. Now, there are other instances, may not necessarily be of, sexual assault. What about the houses that have been burnt? Right? People have been killed. Now, it appears that something like 150 people have died in the violence. 50,000 people have lost everything. They've lost their home, and with the destruction of their homes, they've lost everything. So, what is the government doing about it? Just to say that, listen, one case that has come up, people know about it. All right, we've taken some action. There are other cases like the one that you have mentioned. Are they doing anything about it? Does somebody have to come to the Supreme Court and say that, listen, there's another case? So, how about doing something about it? It can't go on like this. It has to be the whole event, the whole incidents, right from the first day onwards, have to be investigated thoroughly, right?
Well,
And
can I ask you something? You've spoken about the delayed response of the government. Do you think the Supreme Court faltered as well? I bring this up because before Chief Justice made a very strong suo motu statement hours after this viral video and said to the government, if you don't act, we will. There were attempts to get the court involved in what was happening in Manipur. And the court desisted from that. The court suggested that this was not their domain, that this was a law and order issue, that this issue belonged to the legislature, the executive to sort out. Do you think the Supreme Court also made a mistake in not jumping in earlier?
oh yes, I think they did. It's not a simple law and order issue, right? It's a public order issue, and from what we know from the newspapers, police stations have been raided, arms and ammunition have been taken. It borders on a national security issue, right? So the court should have definitely taken action much earlier, as soon as they came to know about it. At least ask the government that, listen, this is what is going on. There are no internet facilities. We don't know exactly what's going on. You stopped internet facilities because of the public order situation. How about telling the country what's happening? If you remember, during the COVID times, right, a statement was made on behalf of the government that, oh, there's not a single person on the streets, right?
Not a single migrant
Now,
worker. Solicitor General made that statement. I can never
right.
forget it because I was on the street walking with the migrant workers at the time. I remember the
Okay.
statement. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there you are. And the Supreme Court believed the Solicitor General, right? Whereas the truth was far from what had been stated. Surely, with that background, the Supreme Court should have been far more circumspect and should have said that, listen, we are pretty, scared of your statements that everything is normal, there's no problem. You please show us that everything is normal. It can't be when there are 50,000 homes that have been burnt, 50,000 people have been rendered homeless. It can't be normal.
So you believe why do you think the Supreme Court declined to get involved earlier?
I don't know. I just don't know why the Supreme Court, believed whatever was being said on behalf of the government. I mean, they had this, precedent of being misled by the government in a situation like this at the time of COVID. They should have been far more careful and said that, listen, okay, we'll record your statement, but you please satisfy us on this also. We're not
Yeah.
going to take a statement for granted.
Do you believe that the court was hesitant because it felt like it was trespassing into legislative domain or into executive's domain?
Well, a simple law and order issue, perhaps yes. But like I said, this was not a simple law and order issue. It's a public order issue, right? Law and order issues also the Supreme Court has intervened. Okay, transferred cases from one place to another. In Gujarat, they transferred the cases from Gujarat in 2002 to Maharashtra. Why? They could have very well said at that point of time that, okay, this is a law and order issue. Let the Gujarat courts take care of it. Why is the government saying that, listen, you please transfer the cases out of Manipur? Because it's not a simple law and order issue. And this is something that was known long back. It is not something that came to be known only recently. It's been known for a long time.
So is the Supreme Court also to blame?
Well, I don't know whether blame is the right word, but yes, the Supreme Court should have acted much faster and with a greater sense of urgency. They should have.
Let's talk about what can and should happen now. Now we have the center's response to be welcomed on one particular horror, but there are multiple horrors, right? And we still don't actually know what the fate of this judicial probe that the Home Minister announced is going to be. Uh, can the Supreme Court get involved while there's a judicial probe that's been announced? I'm a bit confused about the legality of that.
Yeah, well, the Supreme Court can always, monitor the investigation. Now, the CBI is still investigating, right? They've not filed
Yeah,
a
but that's
charge
one
sheet.
case, sir. That's one
Yeah,
case. The
yeah,
judicial
yeah,
probe is meant to look into everything.
right. So, at least as far as this case is concerned, they can continue monitoring it. The Supreme Court should ask the state government that, listen, we've been told that, and there are reports. I mean, it's not that somebody's given them a phone call and told them about it, but there are reports of other such instances. Okay, what are you doing about all of them? You just can't pick up one instance and say, all right, we are doing something about it, and forget about the others. I think it has to be, somewhat like a package deal. You tell us what exactly is happening over there. There are multiple cases, you have documented them, right?
Yeah.
How about telling us what's happening?
Including the BJP's own legislators. You know, one of the saddest stories
Yeah,
is what's happened to one of their tribal MLAs who's crippled and paralyzed, and his family says they're struggling financially. And, you know, I met him in a small temporary rented accommodation, and he can't speak anymore. He can't even speak about what happened to him.
yeah.
So, these are their own party colleagues. Now, my question to you is: you have made a comment, Justice Lokur, that the court should make some suo moto interventions. What shape and form could those suo moto interventions take?
Well, the court has taken suo moto instance notice of this particular instance, right? I think they should broad basis. It's like a public interest litigation. All right, tell us everything that's happening. Okay, now you're going to have the government saying things like, "Oh, national security and all that." Okay, maybe national security. All right, the national security aspect, maybe you can leave it aside. Infiltration from Myanmar and so on and so forth. Okay, if that is something which the government doesn't want to share, that's fine. But you have people going to the police station, picking up arms, picking up ammunition. You've had stories of people who have been caught by the army or by the armed forces, and the women in Manipur have gone and said that you better release them or else, right? How
Yeah,
can this happen? Then why have the police over there? Why have the army? Why have the armed forces over there?
yeah.
It's a very very serious situation. It's not a normal sort of a situation. It's a crisis situation.
And the one crisis is that those who are meant to enforce law, and I don't mean the army right now, which is actually taking on the role of the civil administration by facilitating even dialogue between the two communities, although we now know that a certain amount of professional negotiations have begun, and one should welcome those. The breakdown of the police, either because of a lack of authority or because of bias. Every unit of administration at the moment seems split along ethnic lines. The husband of the sexual abuse survivor on that viral video told me that when his wife was being paraded naked, and he's a soldier, by the way, in the army, a veteran for 28 years, when his wife was being paraded naked, the police was there. And he said two things happened. He said, A, the police was outnumbered. It was outnumbered. The mob was bigger than the police. And he said the police did not want to do anything. Right? So when you have a state where the police's moral authority has collapsed, where the Director General of Police's home has been attacked and assaulted, what should this highest court of the land do? You know, I mean, when I say you, I mean the court knows that the police's authority has gone. What is the intervention for the court to make at this point?
Yeah, you see, all this, we can know only if the court says that, we want a full report. Okay, I can understand that you have 800 or 1,000 people in a mob, and they snatch these two ladies.
Yeah,
Maybe, I don't know, there may be half a dozen policemen over there, maybe 10 policemen. They obviously can't do very much when there's a 800 strong mob. What happened after that? I mean, it's not that the mob was there all the time.
yeah.
They left after some time with these two ladies. What did the police do after that? Right? So I would say that the police also is complicit. Okay, they didn't do anything. Now, once the FIR was registered, a zero FIR was registered, it wasn't transferred to the jurisdictional court. Why? So you have to have all the facts. You can't just say that, well, this is what has happened. The police has not done this, the police has not done that, but you have to get to the bottom of it and find out why has it not happened. By
Yeah.
just saying that, well, these are the facts is not good enough, because this
Should
sort of
the
a situation, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, this sort of a situation, I hope it doesn't arise again. But should it arise again, it happened in 2002, it's happened now, 20 years later. It may happen, another 20 years later, one doesn't know, and I hope it doesn't happen. But can you say that, listen, we are not prepared?
Should the court be directing the appointment of a truth and reconciliation panel, a fact finding committee? Should the court be overseeing the judicial probe? There are thousands of FIRs. There will be, if story after story, tragedy after tragedy, one can document about action that has not been taken on these FIRs. So there is a collapse, as it were, of law enforcement. What are the options legally before the Supreme Court right now to make a direct intervention?
Yeah, you see, the Supreme Court, I think they can appoint a commission. If you remember in Hyderabad, when these four or five persons who had raped a doctor, they were killed in a fake encounter. The Supreme Court appointed a committee of with a retired Supreme Court judge and maybe one or two other people to give a report about what has happened. All right. The Supreme Court has appointed committees on various occasions. Why can't they do it this time and give them an open mandate? You know, because we still don't know the extent of what has happened. We talk about 50,000 people, but out of those 50,000 people, maybe some of them were sexually assaulted. We don't know. Maybe children are missing. Maybe children have been killed. All kinds
Yeah.
of things seem to have happened because it's a massive crisis. So, with an open mandate, I think the court should set up some kind of a commission, not a one man commission, but maybe three, maybe five, so that the entire extent of everything can be known.
And does that override the judicial probe that was announced by the Home Minister?
No, that can go on. That can go on, because that judicial probe seems to be confined only to this one incident.
No, the judicial probe, if I'm not wrong, was actually announced when the Home Minister had gone to Manipur, right?
Huh.
And it was announced in a more general way. But because everything worsened in a security situation after that, it could never do it could never get off the ground, as it were.
Yeah, okay. Now, if a
Yeah.
judicial probe was ordered at that point of
At that time, yes.
yeah, 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 that
Yeah.
was, I think, if I remember correctly, towards the end of May or something.
Yes.
Yeah, whenever it was. Now, if what did the judicial probe do? Apparently nothing. Because if the judicial probe had done something, it would have come to know about this video. It would have come to know about all the other horrors that have taken place. So what's the point of saying, oh, we're having a judicial probe, and then the judicial probe does nothing? There's nobody
Yeah.
to monitor it. So if the Supreme Court says that, listen, we are going to monitor it, they've done it in the past, we are going to monitor it. Let's see what happens.
So, whatever investigation that takes place here on, not only about the Manipur viral video sexual assault case, but in general, uh, do you believe it has to be overseen by the Supreme Court?
Yes, it has to be. It has to be. Because you are saying there was a judicial probe that was earlier announced, right?
Yes.
It seems to have done nothing. Okay, so the government can announce half a dozen judicial probes, they will all do nothing. That's not what anybody wants. So it
Why do you
has,
say they will do nothing?
well, you've got the precedent of this one judicial probe doing nothing. The one judicial probe that was announced by the Home Minister. What has it done? What have they told you? They've not told us anything. It's only journalists, people like you and others who are coming out with these kind of stories of horror. But this is
Let
something
me
which the judicial probe should have told us.
Yeah, I'm actually, we should check, whether the judicial probe was able to actually even begin its work. And I've just asked one of my colleagues to check that while I'm talking to you. There's no update, I've been told. Really, we can't get any more details on what the probe, what happened. Was it not able to take off, maybe because of the security situation in the state and so on? My question to you in the end is, there's a lot of talk about president's rule. That is, of course, not a decision of the Supreme Court. What is the limits or the confines within which the Supreme Court can and should be operating going forward?
Sorry, I didn't get that question.
I'm saying there's a lot of talk about president's rule, but that is, of course, a
Uh-huh.
decision that will be a political decision. Uh, what then are the limits or the framework within which the Supreme Court can and should be responding? Apart from a court monitored probe, that's one of the points that you've made. Obviously, you agree with the center's submission that this case should be transferred out of Manipur. But as I remind you of the complexity of the situation, I think the chief minister himself said there are 6,000 FIRs. Now,
Yeah.
given you could be in a situation where you have thousands of FIRs, so
Yeah.
how do we proceed investigating in such a scenario?
Yeah, you see, something like president's rule is a completely political decision, like you said, right?
Yes.
So you keep the political plane on one side, you keep the judicial plane on the other side. All right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Both of them can coexist. It is not that just because president's rule has been imposed, so therefore no judicial inquiry can take place. It's not like that at all, right? There are two independent, events that have occurred, and the judicial probe can go on.
Yeah.
Now, the Supreme Court can continue to monitor it. I mean, there's no difficulty whether it's president's rule or no president's rule. It doesn't matter.
What in the end, before we conclude, what in the end bothers you the most right now about our response?
Well, what bothers me is, the complete silence. I mean, everybody in the country is deeply upset at what has happened, right? And we don't see any action on the ground, saying, all right, we are referring one case to the CBI. What's the big deal in that? I mean, that is something that you should have done much earlier. Now, it's not, like I said, it's not an average or a normal kind of law and order situation. It's a public order situation. It's a grave crisis
Yeah.
which is facing our border state, right? And if what we are told is correct, there's infiltration from Myanmar and so on. But that adds to the the crisis situation. So we can't have a situation where there's complete silence. Nothing is happening. All right, maybe it'll die its own death. Maybe it will, but that's not a solution.
Let me share with you the composition of the judicial probe. I just wanted to pull out some details. So, it's a three-member judicial inquiry panel to probe the ethnic violence in Manipur. It will be led by the former Chief Justice of the Guwahati High Court, Ajay Lamba, to investigate the cause and spread of the violence and the riots targeting members of different communities. The panel has been asked to submit its report as soon as possible, but not later than 6 months, right? Also, we on infiltration. The infiltration continues. The Manipur government has made a statement saying in the last 2 days we've had 700 cases of infiltration from Myanmar. So I just wanted to put those two facts out there. Now, on the judicial probe being led by a former Chief Justice of the Guwahati High Court, once this detail is there and they've been given a 6 month deadline, does that limit the way the Supreme Court can act, or can the Supreme Court say no? This we'll monitor this probe, or will the Supreme Court set up a parallel committee? I'm just a bit confused.
It can do either. It can say, all right, tell us what is the progress made by this judicial probe, right? It
Yeah.
can do that and say that, all right, we're going to monitor it because we'd like to know what's happened. Or the Supreme Court can say, but if it does say that, that we'll set up our own probe, or we'll set up our own commission, it shows a lack of faith in the uh, existing probe. So I think for the time being, it would be a good idea if the Supreme Court says, listen, we are going to monitor this, right?
Yeah.
We want to know what you have done in the last, whenever you were constituted, 10, 15, 20 days, whatever it is, and we're going to monitor it, right? So, yeah, it's Supreme Court has both options available to it.
And you would hope that the Supreme Court takes over the investigation. Well, when I say takes over, monitors the investigation of not just the Manipur viral video case, but of the entire investigative process
Right.
that this judicial probe has been panel has been tasked to do.
Yes, yes, yes. And what are the remedial steps? You know.
I have a technical question. If this judicial probe is being led by a former Chief Justice of the Guwahati High Court, but the center has asked for one of the key cases to be transferred out of Manipur, is there any contradiction in those two things?
No, not necessary. Not necessary. Uh, that the investigation into a specific crime is going to be investigated by the CBI, right? Then the trial will take place somewhere else, probably in Assam. I don't know, but I would imagine it will be in Assam.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah, go ahead, please.
no, I was just going to say that if you had one wish of the Chief Justice at this moment, what would it be?
Chief Justice of
Of
the
India,
Guwahati High
of
Court
India, of
of India.
India, of India. Yes.
Well, I would like him to, bat on the front foot, and say that, listen, tell us what's happening. Don't just take us for granted. Tell us what's happening. It's very important because things have obviously gone out of control. The police is not able to handle the situation. The government is not able to handle the situation. The army seems to be under pressure. The paramilitary forces seem to be under pressure. What's going on?
Yeah.
We'd like to know what's going on.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Justice Madan Lokur. And it would be very sort of important to see how the Supreme Court responds whenever it does actually hold a hearing, which I hope will be soon, because any delay is actually unaffordable given what's happening in Manipur. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.